Hello, everybody, to this week's developer session. We have this week on the, we're getting very close to the DAO launch, luckily. And 1 second, I had my playback on YouTube as well enabled. We're getting close to the DAO launch, so that will be the focus on this session. And I want to give you a little bit of overview about important feature which got added recently. Quickly, just an update about the new trade protocol status. It was basically on our agenda to have a review and a discussion about the tech spec, and it was delayed. I want to give you a little bit of background and about the next releases and the roadmap to the launch, to the DAO launch. And then, if we still have time, I started a preparations doc for to-do list, basically, where we edit all the to-dos on different areas like development side, organizational side, infrastructure side, and so on for the DAO launch. And maybe hope everybody has time to have a look to this and add anything if anything is missing. And if time permits, maybe we can discuss about this as well. Otherwise, I think we can postpone it to smaller calls with the concrete contributor who is working on something. So maybe I start with a quick overview, which is not DAO related directly, regarding the new trade protocol. There was Nyman and Craig who started to work on this a few months ago. Unfortunately, Craig got serious health issues with his back, and he's still not back to work, so he needs to recover with this. And I have not talked with him directly, but with Nyman, and he told me that it's not very likely that he can join full force soon again. So we cannot really count on their developer force, and we have to reshuffle or reshift their resources and so on. At the moment, we don't have another developer who could take over this project, so probably I have to take it up once the DAO is live. I mean, the DAO has the highest priority at the moment, so I will not focus on this at all. But as soon as we are live and everything is good, it will become my high priority task. We wanted to get this tech spec. Nyman has continued to work on the tech spec, and it was close to final. We just decided, because they will not work on this as a team anymore. And when I work on it, I will write the tech spec for myself. I don't need somebody else to write me a tech spec. So it doesn't make sense that he spends more effort on this. And it's just more efficient when I do it than myself. So, and I will not have time to work on this, so there will not be a tech spec before we are really good with the DAO launch. I could still, in one of the next dev sessions, when there is time, can give a little bit of an overview. There have been a few important changes, especially regarding the arbitration. The arbitration was planned initially to get cut off completely, but then we decided that's maybe too radical. So we found a solution to support arbitration system on an optional basis and try to fade it out over time. But more overview about all this in one of the next developer sessions. So it will be just that I explain it, what I know and what I have in the brain. I mean, there's a basic kind of tech spec there, but it's not updated with these new changes and so on. So it will not be this real review where I ask everybody to really have a close detailed look on it, because we don't have the documents for this. Beside that, I want to give you an overview about this new feature with this. You have probably seen it when you run from source code in the latest master. It's already out. There is a new tab where you get basically the network consensus or monitoring about your data compared to other data, mainly from seed nodes, but also from other data from other nodes with whom you are connected. That should help us to detect any consensus issues. So if any node is out of consensus with any other node, it will be detected. The way how it works, we have basically two different areas of important data for the consensus. One is the data which is derived from the Bitcoin blockchain, and the other data is derived from the peer-to-peer network data, which is the proposal data and the blind vote data. And especially those data, they are not guaranteed that they arrive at every peer, so there could be, as it's basically expected behavior, that it can be that some of this data is not distributed to all, and we still need to get to a consensus in such situation, and to really see the full state of a local node and can be able to compare it with any other node. I added a chain hash or hash chain. It's basically, it takes a hash of your full DAO state. So there's one main model for the DAO, which is called DAO state. And we made it now deterministic. So all the data sets, collections there are now sorted deterministically, so that everybody, when you create a hash from the whole data model, that this hash is deterministically the same for everybody. This hash or this data change with every block. So with every block, there can be a new transactions. There can be changes from the governance side. There can be new proposals or new votes or the vote result. And all this has influence on the DAO state. But it happens always when a new block arrives, then the block gets passed first, and then some other consensus code is executed. And when this is all complete, so when all this code which can change the DAO state is completed, then we are creating a hash, and it's basically one hash for every block. And we are creating then a chain of these hashes. We are taking always the previous hash for creating the new hash. So we're adding the previous hash in together with the hash of the DAO state to create the new hash. So every hash is carrying with that the whole history of the chain. So when you have at the specific block height the hash the same with some other node, you can be sure that all the history is the same as well, because when there would be any change of a previous hash, the resulting hash will be completely different as well. So that's no new idea. That's how Bitcoin works, basically, or a basic idea of Bitcoin. And we are, when you start up, you are requesting these hashes from the seed nodes. So at least from usually minimum 2 nodes, can be more. You get already the hashes, and you see if you're in consensus with those. So when you go on these screens of this DAO network consensus or monitoring, you will, in the first line, when it's red, then you're out of consensus, and you see which nodes are and how many nodes have a different hash. And then it depends on the circumstances, a little bit more complex how to resolve it. But basically, the best way would be to just rebuild your DAO state, as you can do this in the settings to rebuild from Genesis. Then you're rebuilding all, and when you're still out of consensus, then either we have really a consensus issue, or one of those nodes which delivering you the data is out of consensus, not your fault. And it helps you when you see that there's just one node out of 5 which have a different state, then it's probably not your problem. It's the problem of the other node. When it's a seed node, we can fix it quickly by checking the seed node and maybe restarting it or resyncing it. When it's a random peer, we basically have no way to tell the random peer at the moment. Maybe we can add something to notify him or whatever. At the moment, with our testnet, we have not seen any consensus issues. Everything looks good. Yeah, and then there are 2 others. So one is for this DAO state, and then there are 2 for this peer-to-peer network data, for the proposals and for the blind votes. Here, it's a little bit more tolerance possible, because it can be valid, as I said before, that you never receive one of the proposals, and then you would have a different state. Like I think Christoph made a screen sharing. Maybe I show it. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thanks, Christoph. It could be valid, basically, that you didn't receive one of the proposals, and then you create a different hash, because the hash is just created from the list of proposals for this cycle. So the proposals get published in the proposal phase when people are making their proposals. But we ignore all those because in this time proposals come and go. You can remove also a proposal. Only at the beginning of the blind vote phase, we are basically taking a snapshot and we are assuming that all the proposals are well published. But as said, it's not guaranteed. It can be that one or two, some proposals doesn't have been well published, and then people would have a different state. It helps us here to detect this and to find out why they are not well published, if we have an issue with the peer-to-peer network or whatever. And there's already quite a lot of code to help to avoid this, so that to republish your proposal and to get a lot of resilience on that side. So far also we have not seen any issue. That doesn't really mean, as I said, that's more tolerance here. That doesn't mean that it will end up in a consensus problem, because the consensus is done at the result phase. And even if you don't have a proposal or too many proposals, you can come to the same consensus at the end, because those proposals maybe don't count in the result phase or those blind votes. So with blind votes, exactly the same. They are at the vote reveal phase. We are making the snapshots where we are creating the hash. And here, when you out of consensus, usually a restart helps, because with restarting, you are requesting this data again from the seed nodes. And when you miss it and the seed node have it, then you're in sync again. So here it's less critical. It just helps us to detect any issue on the consensus side for the network. So I think that's, at least for me, it was very important to be really sure that it's not only by chance that the results are the same for everybody in the vote result, but that really all the data are 100% the same, like it has to be. We will add those monitorings also to the monitor framework from Florian. I have not discussed with him the details how to do it, but it will have basically similar like here, but more in a broader range. So not only for the seed nodes what you are connected to, but with all seed nodes and maybe even with the whole network, and and more stuff. Here you get also updated as when with every new block, every peer is broadcasting their hashes to the network. So with all your connected peers, depending how many peers have updated now to the new version at the moment, there are not so many. It's only those who are running from source code. But basically from all your connected peers, from the 9 peers, you should receive also the hashes. And in the best case, you have basically received it from 9 peers and 0 conflicts. When you have a conflict, you can click on it, and then you will see this peer. You can request then all the data from the peer, because by default, from the seed nodes, you only get the hashes of the last 10 blocks. It would help to find out that which block the consensus issue happened. So when you would then request and you see, at a certain block height, the conflict started, then we see, okay, it happened here, and we can investigate why it happened and what's the problem. Goody, any questions to this topic? Also to the stuff before, sorry that I didn't make a break and ask you for feedback.
Not from my side.
The UI is a little bit technical at the moment. That could need more love, and maybe Christoph has a little bit time to polish it and make it easier to understand. I didn't take a lot of care. For me, it was more important for myself to have a control about the DAO state. But for the normal user, I mean, at the moment, I think it doesn't alert because I didn't want to shock the network when I want to observe it first if there are still some bugs or whatever. But probably with the next release, we add something when you're out of sync, especially on the DAO state, that you get a pop-up with an alert and you can try to resolve it. I mean, a basic risk for a user could be when you're on a different consensus, that for whatever reason you get a different result, and somebody who requested compensation in your version, he got accepted, but from the rest of the network it didn't get accepted, and he's selling you BSQ and you accept it, you would accept it. But then when you want to send this BSQ to somebody else, it would be invalid BSQ because at the end it was never issued. And to avoid something like this, it's important that the user can be sure that they are in sync with the network and not getting into this risk zone. It's at the end quite a small risk, because a lot of coincidence that you would trade with this peer and so on and to get this. But if there would be bigger consensus issues, would be of course more damage. It's basically a terrible damage, because there must not be any consensus issue.
Manfred, Oscar was asking if what happens if there's a blockchain, a Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah, that's a good point. With the DAO state, it's actually a valid situation. So it can be that for, I think the deepest reorgs on mainnet have been 4 blocks, as far as I know. But Oscar, if you know another number, please let me know. So it can be that in the worst case, you have 3 or 4 blocks, a different state, and it's red. That was another reason why I prefer to not make too much alert, because this alert should only come when you are continuously after 4 blocks or so still out of sync. Then there is an issue, because up to a few blocks, it can be valid that you are on another chain, like another user, and then you get a different hash. And after the reorg is resolved, you are back on the same. Reorgs are handled basically by rebuilding the DAO state. So when you have a reorg, you are starting from the latest snapshot, try to rebuild it. And so it should resolve by itself. I've tested it roughly, not 100% maybe, but should be handled. For the proposal and the blind vote phases, we are basically only taking the height of the block chain. So when we're entering the certain height where the blind vote or the vote reveal phase starts, so that shouldn't be related to reorgs. We have also the break with the 10 blocks in between. So yeah, there I don't expect any issues with reorgs, but on the DAO state, it's a valid case that there can be shallow reorgs and then a short time discrepancy from the DAO state. I still expect that, yeah, no, it can happen, because the block, the hash will be different, and that already creates, even because usually you can expect that even with reorgs, you have the same set of transactions, of BSQ transactions in the block. It's not guaranteed, but it's very likely. But because the block hash will be different from the Bitcoin side, it will be a different hash. So any rework will cause basically a small short period of consensus issue. And maybe in the UI we should explain this a little bit better, because it might be a little bit too shocking for a user when he sees something red and not getting the information that it might be a valid case in case of a reorg. Oscar, do you know what's the deepest reorgs on the Bitcoin mainnet has been in history?
No, I don't. I honestly don't know. Yeah. I know there was a huge work a couple of years ago because of a bug in the Bitcoin source code, and it was a very big fork, but that was kind of accidental, not. Anyway, I got your answer.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else? Any question or concerns or ideas or whatever?
Not so far from my side.
Goodie. Then let's jump to the next. That's regarding the releases. Also, we have a few important features what we still want to get in for the launch. Mainly a new UI where we show facts and figures, like the charts about the price development over time, the burn rate over time, the issuance rate over time, maybe some more. And Christoph is working on this already. Another is to improve the proposal, the voting view, where you can vote on proposals, and the result view. At the moment, you need to scroll down, especially for voting. People don't see the button at the bottom for voting, and yeah, it's not well done from the UI at the moment. So Christoph will work on this to find a better solution for getting a better overview and better usability. Beside that, I'm working on some, started and nearly finished with some to finalize verification stuff, which was never really completed, mainly regarding change parameters and proposals, and a few other smaller issues as a try. Basically, get our GitHub issue list completed, which are still pending. And I assume we could get from development side more or less ready end of the week, maybe beginning of next week. So, and then we want to, we need a good testing phase because there have been a few important other changes, like from peer-to-peer network and from, we moved to Bitcoin, to the new Bitcoin J branch, the 0.14.7, that shouldn't carry much risk, but theoretically can carry risk.
Manfred, that's not the latest release with the SegWit.
No, the 0.15 release, the master with SegWit support, that's our midterm plan that it will take us minimum 4 or 5 months to get there. And on the Bitcoin J side of things are not really complete and not well tested yet, and especially with support for multiple wallets and such stuff. So I don't count that we get this in. Also between 3 and 6 months, I would estimate roughly. Also this branch, what we have now, it's mainly kind of like a refactoring branch and a cleanup branch and a few improvements missing. Bug fixes, which are supported from Bitcoin Master, from Bitcoin J Master, but it shouldn't contain any critical change. So it shouldn't carry any big risk, but of course we need to be sure. It requires a little bit more intense testing, but especially on the peer-to-peer network side, we had a few more risky changes. As developers are using these versions and have not found big problems, there shouldn't be anything broken, but we need to have a good testing cycle for this. So realistically, probably the release might be early or mid next week. That should be basically then the last feature release, and basically then it's a code freeze for anything critical. And then we need to make another testing round, also another week for testing the DAO features, because on the DAO side there have been for sure some critical changes. To be sure that it hasn't broken anything and that we get to a correct result phase again. And when there are no bugs or no reason for another release, we will go straight directly to the launch, to the mainnet launch. Otherwise, more likely there will be another small release with just small bug fixes and small improvements, nothing critical, nothing risky. Maybe 1.5 weeks later or another week later. And then we are basically ready for live. And depending on the other to-dos on the organizational side, communication side, infrastructure side, we need to get everything really prepared. And when we feel that we are prepared on every aspect, we are ready for launch. And also still an open question how we do the launch. There was some idea to make it a live session, basically, that people can follow it when we create the Genesis transaction, and then after this, Christoph will push the release, and half an hour later, the release should be out with a new Genesis transaction. It's still a little bit open question also how much we want to, if it's more a soft launch, which is just dedicated to our community, to the Bisq users, or if we want to make a little bit more communication to a broader audience, like sending out press release messages to journalists. So probably it's better to keep it low level and focus on the Bisq users, but we can discuss this still. So that's the rough plan. So anything bigger, like the API changes, unfortunately didn't have time at all, so we have to postpone this after the DAO launch. And there's some bigger changes planned on the network, peer-to-peer network side, but as Florian also has at the moment these issues with the dentist, he's not fully available, and it would be a bigger, riskier change, so we will postpone this as well. And basically anything which carries some risk will be postponed minimum 1 month after the DAO launch, when everything went fine.
Regarding the launch, Manfred, will we have this closed mainnet test as well?
Yeah, good that you remind me on this. I started already a mainnet Genesis transaction with half a Bitcoin just, and it's more a kind of like a small private testing because it's real money. Also, the BSQ is now backed by real Bitcoin, so I spent half a Bitcoin. That's not nothing. And anybody who wants to test and help us, you need to run from source code and so on to be able to test here, is welcome and should get in touch. We didn't announce it too much publicly because I think it confused another testers. Then they don't know where to test, and it costs now real money. You have to pay the transaction fee or the Bitcoin mining fee. You have to pay yourself. You have to pay me back then the BSQ when we're done because I don't want to lose the half Bitcoin. And yeah, I prefer to keep it in a small group of developers basically. And it was mainly also to see how it behaves from performance point of view, because here we get really the full blocks with 2,000 transactions. So far, I have not seen any issues. Anything which can break consensus, so the normal testing can be done on the normal test net. There shouldn't be no difference. And as we don't need to do super intensive testing on this mainnet. It's called beta testers. When you go to the settings where you can choose the network, where you find the DAO testnet, there is now a new one which is called DAO beta net. That's basically this mainnet, but this special mainnet. So it's not mixed with the normal mainnet. Technically, it's Bitcoin mainnet, but it's separated in an own data directory and so on. Yeah, I said when somebody wants to help us here testing, we have very short phases, just 1 day. 1 day voting, 1 day proposal, and so on, so that we get a few cycles done before launch. We don't do intensive testing, just to get a few proposals and a few votes and check if everything works okay. And as I said, it's mainly focused on performance issues, or maybe with reworks, because that's maybe a thing what we still should work on, to try to mimic reworks on our DAO testnet. To artificially create reworks there. On the mainnet, when we have some luck, there will be some rework in this meantime. That's another thing. It would be good to have kind of like a monitoring for historical data for reworks when reworks happened. I'm not sure if that's very trivial, and if maybe there exist some services where you can look up this, but it would help us when we see some issues, then we see, okay, it happened because of a rework or not. So it would be good to have this somewhere, this data available. Yeah. Anything else regarding this roadmap?
Not really, Manfred. The only thing which would be great is for these critical changes, depending on the Bitcoin J and net layer updates, and also in the P2P network. Could you or Oscar check the test cases that are available if we have to add new ones, or if it's already covered by the existing ones? Just to be sure, if we have more people getting involved in the testing cycles, that we are not missing out important stuff. Yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure, but Oscar, correct me if you have another opinion, that on the Bitcoin side, there's nothing basically, I mean, a small change was regarding the restore from seed words. Now, before the restart was optional, now it's done automatically, and there have been some bug fixes in that area. But I tested this already, and so I can cover this test for the release as well. But I'm not aware of anything which would basically represent the test case. It's just that basically a smoke test that everything works. But as also some users are using the master for trading also, I think when there would have been a problem, it would have been a fatal problem quickly that the transaction doesn't get created or whatever, and we have not heard anything.
Okay, so also for the backwards compatibility tests, we don't have to add something special. So just basic trading and arbitration. So it should cover all.
Yeah. And on the peer-to-peer network side, I also don't think that it will be covered by a new test case, basically smoke testing, that everything goes fine. And as some developers are running all the time masked anyway, I don't expect that there are problems, but Yeah. Then I will move forward to this preparations to-do list. It's just basically a rough to-do list. I was wondering to make it more organized in GitHub or whatever, but I want to leave it to anybody who will pick up some of those tasks and work on this. I tried to assign some persons when I was sure that, when I knew that like Christoph will work on this facts and figures UI. On other stuff, I left it open to leave it to the people that they put their name to the task, to just get basically an overview who is responsible for getting stuff done until the launch, and when something is missing, to add it. There are a few areas like development, UI.
Manfred, do you want to share it, or?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. One second. Yeah, you should see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Can you see that? On the development side, as I started already and I've done a few stuff, there are still a few tests cases what we should try to test, like creating crazy transaction manually and try to find a way how you can create artificial BSQ or whatever. Hopefully that's not possible, but yeah. And yeah, I think there's not too much missing. There are quite a few UI things, so that's probably a bigger area where we need a few days to get this all done. Then on the testing.
Sorry. No, I was already reading for communications. I have a question there, but I continue.
Okay. Yeah, for the testing, I had to create transactions to create BSQ or whatever, find any bug on the consensus side. That's still for sure a never-ending ongoing task and challenge, but I think we are pretty good so far. Yeah, this invalid parameter changes I did already, not completely complete, but nearly. There's open draft pull request for this. Yeah, mainnet, that's done already. We started already. For the infrastructure, everybody who runs a seed node, they need to start prepare it so that you run Bitcoin Core, because the seed nodes will be full DAO nodes, so they need to have Bitcoin Core with a special configuration. So before you start it, yeah, you have to check out the documents. Also, you need especially this transaction index enabled, otherwise you have to restart again with the syncing, and syncing takes roughly 2 days. You need roughly 300 gigabyte of disk size. It must not run in pruned mode, and because of the transaction index, it's a little bit larger like the normal block chain size. Regarding how much RAM the server or the node will require, it's a little bit open question. Florian has fixed the important memory leak with the seed node, so it seems that they're not growing anymore on memory requirement. I still want to be on the safe side and prefer to pay $10 more a month for this node instead of risking that all the seed nodes are crashing. And because with the DAO, it's much more relevant. They are delivering the blocks for every light node. Most users will run their application in light mode node, where they get the BSQ blocks from the seed node. So when the seed nodes are not delivering this data, it's they cannot get to the consensus, or they cannot use BSQ basically. So it's much more critical now, the seed nodes, like it was before. So I don't want to save money on their infrastructure side, like to pay $40 instead of $50 to save a little bit on RAM, and then risk that we're running out of memory or whatever. So later we can improve this, and Florian will go on to work on this improvements on the seed node, that they're working more stable, and that the memory leak is 100% gone. Before we are there, I prefer to just be on the safe side. And then with Florian, yeah, with the monitoring, that's not a showstopper. So when we don't get there before the launch, we still will launch, but will be good to have as soon as possible to be sure on the monitoring side that we have a good view about the health of the DAO in the network, and especially on the seed node side. Then on the communication side, one important document which is missing is a kind of like emergency plan. When anything goes wrong, when there is a consensus bug, when there's a hack, when there's whatever problem on the DAO, how we basically plans what we are planning to do. And we have a few security features already built in. For instance, we can stop trading by disabling BSQ, so nobody can use BSQ for trading anymore. That would help us already when there's any problem that we are basically freezing the funds, that nobody can sell or transfer the funds anymore, and we can send out anyway an alert message to everybody so everybody get notified about this. Another flag is to disable the DAO completely, so that DAO is basically like now not enabled anymore. That will stop the DAO completely in the network. All these flags can be overwritten by, also these flags exist already for other stuff like the update message, and where we can ban users when we had these very few chargeback cases, as when there is a clear case that the user was a scammer, then the only address get banned, or that payment methods or currencies get banned, like we did with Cash App and with Grin, where we figured out that Grin was not stable enough, and then we removed it. And those are kind of like centralized messages. I have the key to be able to send out these messages. I only do it for very serious things. And when I would start to abuse this or whatever, a user don't agree to this, then they can override it by ignoring these developer messages, the program argument. And when they ignore it, then the network, this message just doesn't exist for him. But of course, when we figure out there's a big problem in the DAO and we are stopping the DAO, and still users start to trade with the DAO because they're ignoring this, then it's on their own risk. And when we have to restart, in the worst case, everything over, and we have to roll it back in the way how we can do it, or whatever the disaster management will be, we don't take care about those people who ignored these flags, because when we tried to protect them and they ignored it, then it's their own risk. And when they lost money, then we don't care. But beside that, when anybody would lose money because of a bug or because of a hack, we will try to recover it with reimbursing, basically. We also try to freeze such funds when we can be sure there was a hacker and we know that he has not moved his funds already. Then we try to confiscate it and block it. And for this, it's important to react quickly, as when we see there's a hacker who has created 1 million BSQ out of thin air and he still has not sold it in trades, we can disabling the DAO, then basically flag this UTXO as banned, then making a new version out, and then he cannot move these funds anymore, and basically confiscated. And of course, we have to fix the bug. So we don't have stupid statement like code is law, and then when a bug happening, then we are changing our minds. We make clear when there is a problem, we try to fix it. The intention of the DAO is that it works for the project, for BISC as a governance and funding model for transferring value from traders to contributors and making it accessible that everybody can become stakeholder. It's not the intention that the hacker exploit a possible bug. And when the hacker is managing to do this, we do everything in our power to stop this and to confiscate this. And in this document, we have to make this very clear that there are no stupid discussions afterwards that people say, no, that's breaking now. You cannot change history or whatever. Then, we have to make maybe a little bit more clear in some, I don't know where exactly, in some documents probably, that you must not create manually your own transactions, BSQ transactions, or use it from some other wallets and send some BSQ to a tracer or to any other wallet and think you can just move it like another Bitcoin, because very, very easily you can burn your BSQ when you don't know exactly what you do. And when you do it, it's completely your own risk. When you burn your BSQ, we will not help you. So we will not accept the reimbursement request for some people who are hacking around and don't know what to do. When they do it, they play with fire, and they shouldn't do it, basically. So when they do it, they really have to study the source code and know exactly the consensus rule. It's not enough to read the tech spec, because it's not 100% complete. You have only the source code is the 100% documentation, basically, and there are not many people who would have the knowledge to do this in a safe way. Even for myself, it would be dangerous, and I would be very, very scared to send some BSQ to another wallet and try to send it somewhere else. And there is in the very early days, I did it, and I managed to use Traceur as for storing my BSQ and figure out what I need exactly to do, how to send it and back. I don't remember the details again, and it will require a little bit more thinking, and maybe at some point we make a very careful document about the exact step, because it's a valid use case. Of course, people want to have their BSQ done in a cold storage like a Traceur, and it's just a little bit a dangerous area when you don't have 100% control how a transaction is created. Yeah, your BSQ can get burned, and I think it's possible. It just needs a lot of care and a very well tested procedure and document. And even then, I think I would always leave it to the user, because, yeah. Also, to make it clear to the user, here is our help, but when you do it, it's your risk at the end. So over a longer time, maybe we find some solution to support Traceur directly in BIS, because that would be my. Or to have some, I don't know yet, I have not thought much about it, but of course it would be good to have some solution for cold storage, which is really safe, where you don't need to delegate the risks to the user, where you deliver them software which just works. But that will take a while and will not be on our highest priority. Yeah, then basically for the web page, I think we need something for the launch. So updates from some pages and maybe a home page for the launch or whatever. I have not thought about it, but I think that's for sure bigger to do, and we should start to focus on this. On the organizational side, feel free to interrupt me. I just move on to the next step. We can afterwards can have a discussion about some details or so. But if you have a burning question, just interrupt me. Yeah, I said this for the seed node operators, they have to prepare already. It takes a few days at least to sync Bitcoin Core. I started already to send out emails to all past contributors from the original Genesis distribution and collecting the Bitcoin addresses. Unfortunately, I will not have time to get much in contact because many are good friends, and I have not been much in touch over time with this. It's a little bit of pity to not use this opportunity to catch up with them more, but I'm super busy with the DAO launch. So when anybody is listening of those past contributors, I apologize when I'm not very social now. Then
Manfred, did you get any response so far?
Yeah. I have not checked my emails, but for sure, quite a few have already responded and so on. I expect that some maybe have changed their email or whatever. So it's still a little bit open question how I deal with the case when I don't get a response. If I should take the old address, what they gave me 2 years, so in summer 2017, I think it was, yeah. Which is the risk that they maybe don't have the wallet anymore, and then we issue this BSQ and they never can take the BSQ. Another option is that I take it in escrow basically and keep it, and when they come back then a half year later and say, I missed this and I never got this email for whatever reason, then I still have the BSQ and can transfer it, and maybe that's more safe instead of assuming that they still have the wallet and maybe don't have it. So yeah, that's still a small question.
Yeah, maybe, Manfred, maybe we should also, Manfred, can you hear me?
Yeah, there are a few proposals regarding the bonded roles, also which bonded roles we support in the DAO. we have in the GitHub issue, we have a lot of roles, and it's a blurry area. I mean, not every real role in the Bisq DAO is what people are doing is represented as a role in GitHub. Then not all those roles are really relevant that they should be in the DAO. I mean, my main rationale when I added the roles to the DAO was which role can theoretically create damage, like the one who controls the domain. Of course, you can create a web page like bitcoin.com and create damage for the project, like Roger Ver has created for Bitcoin. And then he should be punished by confiscating the bond. A seed node operator who don't care and don't have a stable node creates damage for the network because, yeah, it decreases usability. So, I mean, confiscation is always the last resort. It's only really for bad intention and severe violations. Usually, we just remove this when a seed node operator doesn't really care. We remove him, and somebody else will take over this node. So, not so critical. So, it's a question how strict we really. I don't assume that anybody of the role operators is malicious. We only give an important thing is that becoming a role owner will be already a voting process. So everybody who has a role will basically now request the role by voting, and only when he get accepted, then he need to lock in the bond, and then he's basically officially the role owner. But one issue is that some of the bonds, depending on the amount, how much we require for the bond, which is a little bit problematic as long as we don't know the BSQ price. At the moment, we assume it's $1, but when the BSQ price is $5 or $10, then the bonds are way too high. The bonds are locked in for a long time. At the moment, we don't have a feature that you can basically just unlock and automatically renew the bond with a new changed lower required bond amount. So at the moment, you would need to do the voting again, which is a little bit a cumbersome process. Also, I would suggest that we just wait a little bit, 2-3 months before we starting using the bonded roles. Then also the contributors have more time to earn more funds. We know more what the real price will be, because at the moment some of the contributors who are already executing some roles, like running seed nodes, they have not earned so much BSQ that they would be able to pay the bonds which are required at the moment. Maybe they're just too high, but maybe it's reasonable because, I mean, yeah, and it's, of course, it's always very difficult. What's the maximum damage when I abuse the Bisq domain? I mean, is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? Is it $1 million? It's very hard to say. So I would, yeah, it's an open question how we deal with this, but it would be basically good when we get when you have time to check out these proposals to see if there is missing an important role. Basically, as I said, I want to limit it to those roles where you can create damage. Also, everything which represents Bisq to the outside world, like the Twitter account, the domain, of course, everything which gives you a privileged access, like running the relay node for the mobile notifications. Theoretically, he could try to collect data and abuse this data and learn a little bit more about the users, like we want to do. So it has a little bit of trust involved. Being responsible for an important repository, mainly, of course, the Bitcoin, the Bisq repository, but other repositories like the Bitcoin J fork or the NetLayer libraries, the external libraries, which are very essential for our project and which are basically already now, like the NetLayer is covered by Florian. Bitcoin J is already, Oscar is the owner basically of that repository already. So that might make sense to add a bond for this, because basically we need to trust those persons that they are the owner of the code base there. But for other roles, like for the docs, I think for the docs page, we don't have our own role because, I don't think that you can really create a lot of damage. And when somebody would start to publish bad content there, we just I mean, the GitHub admin can always revoke the access there, and we can fix this quickly. I think it's not really a risk that can happen to the project. So I would like to limit, maybe have already too many roles defined and we kick out a few. I tested with changes that we are a little bit flexible, like the bond amount can be changed without big problems. We can add new roles. I think, I'm not sure if we can remove roles. That probably causes troubles when they have been used in past past proposals or voting rounds. But there's some level of flexibility here. But I think best is to be just conservative, to just use it where it really helps us, where we really need it, and not overuse it, and maybe start a little bit delayed and slowly, and not a hard requirement. We are not in the state that completely anonymous role owners take over some roles, and we need this as security because there's no trust relationship. Everybody who executes a role have already a healthy trust relationship because they worked already since quite a while for the project, so there's no reason to assume that it carries any real risk. So yeah, then another. Sorry.
Yeah, I also think that it's getting more important if we have the mediation system in place and trying to get on more mediators, which we have not personal contact with.
Yeah, the mediators will be, but that requires the new trade protocol. As soon as that is out, there will be a role for the mediator, and that's for sure interesting then to get more mediators, and that can be anonymous people at the end. And their bond is then really important because, of course, a mediator who is not working correctly, he's hurting the project, of course. And regarding the parameter changes, it's another area. I don't want to overuse it, that we have for every small details possible to change it over voting. Should be only limited to that areas where it makes sense, where we can assume it makes sense to change it. And would be good that everybody review this proposal to see if anything important is missing. Then the parameters have a maximum and a minimum change. Also, when it's allowed to change to the maximum to 50% of the current value, then the maximum decrease is 2. Also, you can go down by 1/2, and the maximum increase, when it's number 3, then it means you can maximum increase it to 3 times the higher value, like the current value. It always reflects to the current value. So with repeated voting, we can repeat it, the changes. So when the maximum and the minimum is 2, like for many of the parameters, you can double up or double down with every voting. At the moment, probably this maximum and minimum limits are maybe too high. We'll probably change it to a little bit more conservative values. Some values have additional protections, like for instance, for the percentage required that the proposal is accepted cannot be below 50%, because it doesn't make sense that you accept something with 20% voting. I think that's not logical. When a majority, I think to have this hard limit, you cannot go lower, even if you can change the required percentage for most proposals is 50%, but for some like confiscation requests, I think it's 85%, and for changing a parameter, 75%. And when we want to change it to a lower value, we can go down a little bit, but we cannot go below 50%. And there are some other restrictions as well, which overrule basically. Even if you would theoretically be able to change it 20% lower and you're already at 51%, you cannot go lower. But yeah, that would be good that people are reviewing this a little bit, because as said also here with the parameters the same, we can change these values without hard breaks. I mean, the worst case is that I think it doesn't break anything on the consensus side. A user who has not updated might get a different consensus in voting when he would not have accepted one of the proposals because he has an old version where it was in a different limit like it is in a new version. but then he's basically on the minority and he needs to update, and then he's on the majority again. And when we change something like this, we have to be careful to not do it closely to the vote result phase or wherever, where it's more risky with consensus breaking when just a few people have updated and then get the different consensus and so. But basically, it carries some flexibility, but we shouldn't count too much on this. So we should get the original values as good as possible, that we don't need to change them. And also, I mean, this parameter change, it's basically exceptional. It's not that now we should play around to find bugs, but when we are live, there should be a strong reason why we really want to change. The only values which might change more often over time are the fees, and especially also then the fee for the arbitrator. Initially, it will be 0, but over time, the user with the new trade protocol, they have to pay a higher fee when they want to still have support of arbitration, to create a little bit of pressure that people are moving over to the new system. And so such parameters are expected that they will change more frequently. We should avoid to change it, because at the end, all those changes could lead to a consensus bug when we miss something in testing, and better to not risk it when it's not really required. That's why they have also a very high quorum and very high threshold. Threshold is called the required percentage. Quorum is the required BSQ for voting. So when the quorum is 100,000 BSQ and only a few people have voted on this at all, and it's only 50,000 BSQ which was used in the stake, then it will be rejected. Then, yeah, the list for the Genesis distribution, my task. Yeah, we still need to discuss a little bit. We had already in the past a discussion about how we are treating the contributions from the contributors who have participated in the voting and in the after the Genesis launch, and we had some discussions regarding this. We'll keep this a little bit up for closer to the launch, but we want to apply some factors that those who have contributed over long term, that they have proven that they're very they stick to the project, and those contributions who are leading more into the past, that they get a factor that was also applied in the original Genesis distribution. It's like a bonus in a company. Those people who worked, who have been there from the very beginning and took more risk, and at the end, every contributor is like a shareholder in a company. Everybody just get paid in this kind of like equity. So everybody takes some risk, and those who have taken the risk 1.5 years ago, the risk was much higher, like now. And also those who have contributed over the whole time, they delivered a higher value, like other contributors who have just worked for 1 or 2 months and then left again. Then the contribution didn't help so much because it takes some onboarding effort and so on. And we want to reflect this in this contribution of the past 1.5 years. Yeah, we still, I'm not sure if we do it before the launch or after the launch, but would like to distribute a little bit more the current node operators. I'm still running a little bit too many of the nodes, and yeah, would like to distribute this a little bit better. I don't want to put too much effort into this, and especially with the seed nodes, I prefer to have more direct access when there are some issues. I can fix it quickly and don't. I'm not depending on somebody else who is maybe sleeping, and then I have to wait 10 hours before we can get it fixed. So that's still an open question, but basically there are a few non-DAO related areas like the notifications relay, the markets page, the providers nodes, which are, I'm happy that when I find somebody who take over this areas, it's a little bit of time consuming for me. I mean, some are not time consuming at all, like the notifications relay, but the markets page, at every release, I need to make a small update there and so on. And I would be happy when somebody else take over this.
Manfred?
Yeah.
Running the seed nodes and provider nodes. Is this documented somewhere, how to set it up? Or is this the question I want to ask, does it need someone who has an engineering background, or is it open for?
So no, I want it's not that it's so complicated, but it's just when you have some issues, as I want to have developers for these nodes, because it's just easier when there are some problems to get it fixed, and to have some good OPSEC background, people who have some good Linux background and so on, and to not run into trivial problems. And I mean, the only critical nodes which caused more troubles was the seed node, because mainly of this memory leak and so on, and also because they are more critical for the network. They're not super critical, and once I had really a big problem where all seed nodes were dead because of out-of-memory problems. Even then, the network recovered, as long as there are other nodes which are live for a longer time, so the data is not vanishing. It's just usability decrease when a new node starts and all the seed nodes are down. Yeah, then he needs longer to get the data and so on. And when it's a completely new node, of course, he cannot connect it all to the network, and you need to ask for some onion addresses on the forum or wherever. But provider nodes are very low. There's basically nearly no maintenance needed there at all. It's simple to set them up. They are don't have a lot of resource requirements. Market page is a little bit a bigger effort, and as said, notification relay is super similar like the provider nodes, even lower. Yeah, the documents are, because it's so simple at the end. You just check out GitHub, you start your node with a few program arguments, that's it. And because most of those nodes, we don't need 20 people for those provider nodes. I think I have 2 remaining which I want to delegate. So basically, when I find 1 or 2 developers who are taking over those, it's fine. It's not worth to write the document for this. It's easier to send them the list of program arguments I used, and that's it. Notification relay is even easier. The only bigger thing is the markets, but that's also, it's a handover, and only one person will run this. And with the seed nodes, I would want to wait until Florian has he has done already a lot of improvements, also how to run the node as a service and so on. And I want to wait a little bit until this is complete, and then we can distribute it a little bit broader. And because of the risk for the DAO, because they're very relevant for the DAO launch, I'm not sure if it's a good idea when I try to distribute it too early and then maybe have more risk when there's any issues. So probably it's better that I keep my 4 seed nodes, and then after the DAO launch, I try to distribute this more. Yeah, there's one open. We had a few discussions already, mainly with Devin, how we deal with the proposals, what you do on GitHub. And theoretically, you could change the content of the proposals, and then historically it would be good when people can look up the proposals and can see what people have voted on. And at the moment, because it's out of the system, it's on GitHub, basically at least the GitHub administrator always could change history later. So it would be good to have some secure way that a hash basically of the version which was used at voting. So as soon as voting starts, blind vote phase starts, that we create and freeze the content of the proposals with a hash, and then the hash is somewhere committed or wherever, and then we can be sure that it cannot have been changed afterwards. At the moment, yeah, the issuer can change it himself. He always have right access for his proposal. I was considering maybe to use a pull request, but then it's a little bit more complicated. People have to make a fork of the project, and non-developers, for non-developers, it's a little bit more challenged, like to make an issue on GitHub. I think that's a very low barrier. Make a pull request, it's a little bit, requires a little bit more knowledge about Git and so on. Also, it's then the question in which format we are committing. It's also not really a good solution. I don't want to bridge it too closely that it becomes part of consensus or whatever. I think it's good enough to have basically a separate system where we get, it could be basically a script which is just downloading the proposals at their block height when the blind vote starts. Then they get frozen. They are archived somewhere, and then a hash is committed, maybe even to the blockchain, and then we have a transaction where this is 100% frozen, and everybody can run. Could be a small service, basically. Everybody can run such a service. We run one, which is then available at some address. Everybody can view then all this historical data, and when somebody doesn't trust us, or the one who is running this, he can run it himself. Something like this, I think, is good enough. And then we have basically this commitment, and it's then a social commitment also. Everybody can agree that, yeah, the version is correct. When any anything would happen that the one who is running this would cheat and rewrite history, then everybody else could run it and could detect this problem. So I think that would be good enough. We don't need to have it in the DAO code that basically we would use then the hash of the of the GitHub page and then put it into a transaction or whatever. At the moment, I think there's no good place where we could put it in. Also, any change would, yeah, it's complicated to change anything in the consensus code with backward compatibility. So, and I don't want to make it more complex and complicated like it is already. So, and I don't see a hard requirement for this. I think the DAO also always depends on social consensus, that people are doing their due diligence. For instance, another example is two people could make a proposal for changing a parameter for two different values, like changing the fee, the trade fee. One is changing maybe to 10% higher, and the other is changing to 20% higher. And both could be basically get voted okay with a majority. That would cause an error in the result, and basically the whole vote round would be invalid then, because it shows that we have a social consensus bug that we are not thinking when we are voting. When the majority of the voters have voted for both okay, then they have not thought what they vote, because they cannot agree to a conflicting result that they say at the same time, no, it should be changed to 20%, and at the same time they say it should be have changed to 10%. That would show that people are just voting randomly and don't think about it, and we have to fix this on a social level, basically. And I would see this with this, to be sure that the proposal have not been changed. In a similar way, we have to do our due diligence and control this. And also, I mean, when somebody would fake this with whatever, it's a question what he can gain. He would very quickly lose completely his reputation and never get accepted any proposal in future anymore when it's done with bad intention. So I think it's, I don't see real risk there, and it's a little bit complex how to do it right, but it's an open task where basically we should find a solution for this, but I would prefer basically to have a kind of like an out of DAO system, subsystem, which is handling this, like I said, like a script, which is just getting the data and archiving it and taking care of the hashes and so on. And it can be any developer who want to work on this, or can be done any time after the DAO. It's not critical, but when somebody else has it, I mean, it's good to have at least some idea how we want to do it, and that this idea really works and makes sense and so on. So that's basically my task before we launch, to have more or less a clear idea. And then when we implement the idea is probably not critical. So if you have any, any to add there, or another idea or whatever, because maybe there is another idea to bring it into the DAO, and then it's everything which will affect the DAO, especially consensus, has to be done as soon as possible. It's already very late now. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, to discuss something what I forgot? Feel free, I think, when you don't have access to the document, just ping me. I hope I sent it to everybody already. But feel free to just edit in the document, assign your name when you are able to take responsibility of this task. And yeah.
That sounds great. Thanks for putting all this together, Manfred.
Yeah, and as soon those get stroked out more and more, we are getting, it's our countdown basically. As soon, yeah, we're ready. I think realistically, in the best case, we could be ready in 2 weeks. More realistically, it's probably 3 weeks, but I think when nothing critical happens, I think three weeks is a realistic launch date. That will be then roughly the first or second week in April. Around the DAO launch time, I would be happy when most of, at least those people who have a more important role around the launch is available, that when anything critical happens, that we can react quickly. Yeah, it's, as said before, it's still a little bit the question from the communication strategy, how far we go out, if we want to keep it more a soft launch in our community, or for instance, if you want to make a press release, sending it out to journalists as well. I tend more to the soft launch, low risk option, and then when everything went good and everything was successful, that we're slowly trying to increase our reach. But I think from the basic communication side, we are pretty good now from the documents, and I think from testers, I don't. Steve, do you have some data how many people have participated in the survey, in the feedback, and so on, so that we have an idea how many people really have tested it out and so?
Yeah, we have. I mean, right now just one for the survey, but I haven't pushed it out. I think as soon as this proposal phase is over, I'll push it over to all the people who have participated to get some more data.
Yeah, I mean the survey. Right, I think it was not included in the code in the last release.
Yeah, I think it's right now in master. I think.
I think it's only 1 week or so that we merged it. So it's only a few people who are running. It's not too many people who are running from source code, and those are usually people who are already active and developing. They're probably not doing the survey. So
we have several people. I think probably between 10 and 20 people who have participated in this round and the last round who are completely new. So I'll manually reach out to them so that they can do the survey for
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, you have also covered a lot of when people are requesting BSQ for testing. Do you have a rough guts estimation over the last, how many, also from the non-developers, of how many new contributors or users, traders have participated in the testing? 30, 40, 50?
I think new people, probably 20, 25.
Okay.
Would be a good estimate for right now. Over the past 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
And from the contributors, probably 20 all in all.
Yeah. So I would say we're probably around 50 total among both contributors and users.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen from the number of proposals and number of votes, it was 20, 30 at each round.
Yeah.
Which was our target, basically. We didn't want to get too many. Yeah, I think it's more or less in the range what we targeted. It's hard to say. I mean, it would be good to find out how many of our traders really know about the DAO. How many we have reached. That would be an interesting number. But I don't have a good idea how we managed to figure out this.
Yeah, one thing I would like to suggest, if we could somehow make maybe just add some additional blocks and make it so that the proposal phase goes from like Wednesday to Friday instead of Thursday through Saturday, because the last day it's really hard to reach people on Saturday.
Just remind me. I will push it up a little bit. I can speed up the time also from 10 minutes of 9 minutes or whatever, and then we are making a little bit faster the phases.
Yeah,
maybe I don't know if 1 week is maybe not a bad idea to speed it up a little bit now to get.
Should be okay.
Yeah. Also, it creates a little bit more load, or I mean, yeah, so it, yeah, I think I maybe speed it up to maybe even 5 minutes. That for the half of the time, then it's 3 days and a half more or less the cycle duration, or is it too much? It's a little bit a question. People are missing their vote reveal. It's, I think at the moment it's 1 day. Half a day is too short. I think 1 day we need to leave for the vote reveal. And I think it's with the current time, it's 1 day. So we cannot go too short because otherwise, yeah.
I think it's 2 days right now.
It's 2 days?
Yeah,
okay.
299.
Okay. I will check out when, I think we can go down to 1 day basically because yeah, when you're active in 1 day, you manage to, and if not, it's also not the end of the world. Okay. Anything else or otherwise?
No, I just checked the referrals that we are passing on for the Docs website from the desktop client, where we linked from the DAO links within the client, and I think it's about 103 users.
How many? 100?
103 users who visited the Docs site from after selecting a link regarding the DAO within the client.
And do you see how many users in general have visited the DAO Docs site? That would be a good number as well.
In total, you mean?
Yeah, over the last months at least. How many people? Well, how many people have watched the video saying? 50,000.
No, since January, it's 50,000 users. I can look since February.
For the Docs site.
Sorry. I was on the website. Sorry.
Also as the special the Docs site for the DAO. Also the main starting point for the DAO. And as well for the videos. Maybe Steve, maybe you can check on YouTube what's the statistics to see how many views we had on the introduction videos. I think that gives a good number of the people who have really have become interested to understand the DAO.
Video is around 300. 275, 300 for the intro video.
So those are maybe the users. Yeah, I think from those numbers probably we can derive more or less the users what we have reached who got interested in the DAO and maybe hopefully understand it more or less. So yeah, it's, I think, yeah, the number of downloads is between 5,000 and 10,000. So when we reach 500 users, we have something like 5 to 10%. Yeah, it's maybe a little bit below our target, but yeah, I mean, I think in that direction we can try to push a little bit. I mean, I think for me the highest priority is to get everything prepared and everything done. But when there is still time on the site, to go on to push to reach our users, because it seems that we have not reached them very well when we only have maybe 2 to 5% at the moment with 300 users from 10,000 or 5,000. That's not a lot.
Manfred, what about using just for once the messaging, the centralized messaging system? To get a message out, or do you think it's kind of problematic because you can't click on the link?
At the moment, the UI is pretty ugly, and I think it comes in red like an alert, and the title is fixed with alert. So we can do it for this release to fix this, to make it more configurable, or to make it just more beautiful, and that it doesn't come like an alert, that it's just like a message. Then I'm fine. But that we have to do in this release and only send out after this release. Otherwise, it's more, yeah, at the moment it's a little bit, as far as I remember, it's just a red alert with straight red, and I think you cannot edit the title. You only can edit the text.
Yeah, and I think also the problem is that we don't support kind of clickable links. It's just plain text. So that might also be.
I mean, yeah, it's I mean, can be done, of course, but the alert system, yeah, it's an effort which maybe not worth the effort at the moment. to, and basically I didn't want to overuse this because I said it's this developer messages. The update is one part of this. I only want to really use for stuff which really is so important that nobody complains about it. When people would feel, I get now all the time like, update messages and are interested to get notified, then they start to use this flag, and then we don't have any way like blocking a currency, or then we lose this power tool.
What we also could do, Manfred, is with the next release, just open a pop-up with "Don't show again," or just don't show again.
Exactly.
So we can also use kind of proper links to click and.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that would be good to have just something like that. This is basically the last planned release before the DAO launch. Now it's the last time. Please check out when you have not learned. It's a very important thing for the Bisq project to get it really decentralized and so on. Yeah, some good text, some good UI, so a good design for this. I think that would be a good idea. Yeah. And I think with that we could, and then have some clear links to their, maybe with some small thumbnails to the video and to the docs, just 2 links, one for those who want to read and the other who prefer to watch videos. And hopefully we manage to route a few more people over. And what's your opinion about how do you think we should make something like a press release, for instance?
Personally, I kind of agree with you. I think we should be as careful as possible to start with, and then I think after a month or so, when it's going well, I think we can try to push it more. There's so much negative sentiment from certain people about DAOs in general, and I think making a big deal about it, if anything goes wrong, even slight issues, people are gonna exaggerate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but at the end, I think it was only this Francis Poulon, so this Canadian guy. I have not really seen, and at the end, many others maximalists have then defended us against with him. I have not really saw any support for his side. Are you aware of some other maximalists who have been very negative?
I mean, he's definitely the most vocal one. Personally, I think there's been a bit of a shift in sentiment over the past maybe month and a half. There have been several events. I think people are realizing that governance in general is just a big deal, and any approach to fix that with respect to decentralized exchanges and KYC and all that is a good one. So I think like, for example, with that Mr. Hodl guy on Twitter, I've sensed a little bit of a shift in his approach. He's been a lot more vocally in favor of Bisq and what we're doing with the DAO. So I don't know about Francis in particular, but I think the sentiment overall has become more positive.
Yeah. And I think he didn't repeat anymore. It was a one-time shot where he was very negative, and then he stopped discussing.
Yeah, I even met some people when I was in Boston. There was a couple of people who work with him, who know him personally, who said that they were trying to convince him about the Bisq DAO and that it's not really what he thinks it is and all that. So I think it's something he'll slowly realize. He's the only one.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good, because I mean it was a difficult challenge to get this message for this group communicated correctly, and I got the feedback actually from other from some people that we did you mainly did a very good job for communicating that it doesn't come over like any ICO scam or whatever. But of course, people are different, and some don't get it and don't read stuff, and then have to quickly their own opinion. Anyway, so let's maybe keep with our goal to just focus that we reach our users. I think there we maybe need a little bit more push. My goal would be at least 10% of the traders, so roughly would be between 500 and 1,000 users of Bisq, that they have basically visited either the videos or the docs or both. Of course, we don't know the details because we don't do any eval tracking, but when we see that 500 people have visited the videos, we probably not many are visiting 2 times or 3 times the same video. Goody. Then let's wrap up here.
Yeah.
If you have anything special in the detail, just ping me and so on. We can go on directly. But would be great. If anybody who works on some areas, put your name on it so we get a little bit of overview what's not covered, and especially not to miss something important that we are not 2 days before the launch. Then we should have done this, and then have to delay it or whatever. Okay, then thanks everybody for participating. And as said, the next release, probably more realistically, it will be early next week. Well, Christoph, what's your estimation? I think that's the biggest chunk of the UI work.
Yeah, I guess so. Mid of next week, beginning mid of next week, I will try to get everything done until end of this week. And if it's a lot of testing, we'll need 1-2 days. Maybe one day intensive testing.
Yeah, would be good to get a little bit more tests. As I think last release, Christoph was. It's basically always Christoph and Devin, and sometimes myself when I have enough time. But I think over the last releases there have not been many other testers, or Christoph?
I don't think so. On the Devin, correct me if I'm wrong. On testbed, I think there were not any other testers. But what we can do this time to do kind of proactively create a couple of test links for the testing tool and post it so people can just pick it up.
One thing is that the areas are, also when somebody has done a certain pull request, that he get it assigned for testing. Also, I think that's that at least the developers are participating a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it would be also good to get some other non-developers like Humad maybe, or Alexi, or some other people who are doing other stuff, usually to invite them to help us testing. Just normal user testing doesn't need to be the more complicated test, just like to take a little bit away the workload from your side, that you are not so fully blocked in this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's try to push it out more proactively this time. But yeah, let's aim for Monday, Tuesday to start testing.
Maybe next week, maybe you can give a little bit, or you or Devin or both can give a little bit overview about the testing tool again, that it's easier for people to get started with.
Yeah, sure.
Not complicated, but just a refresher.
Yeah.
Goody, then let's wrap up. 1.5 hours, way too long. Hey, thanks everybody for watching, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.